A wrench can no longer fix a truck. Only a password can. Across the country, mechanics with 30 years of experience are standing next to fully functional diesel engines they are legally locked out of repairing. Not because they lack the skill, because the truck itself refuses to talk to any tool that isn't licensed by the manufacturer. Consider an owner-operator in eastern Ohio, we'll call him Dale, hauling refrigerated freight on a 5-year note. His transmission threw a single fault code on a Tuesday morning. The nearest dealership with an open bay was 4 hours away. The part cost $380. The week it cost him in missed loads cost him $9,600. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly which decision, made more than a decade ago, turned every truck on the interstate into a device you don't fully own. That decision has a name, a date, and a very specific economic logic behind it. We're going there next. There are roughly 3.5 million heavy-duty trucks registered for interstate commerce in the United States. The majority of them are owned not by mega fleets, but by small operators running 1 to 5 trucks. For those operators, a single unplanned dealership visit isn't an inconvenience. It's a direct hit to a margin that's already thin. Dale's story didn't end with the tow. When his truck finally reached the dealership, the diagnosis took 6 hours. Not because the problem was complex, but because the shop was backed up with other locked-out trucks from independent operators who had nowhere else to go. He paid $1,150 for a repair that, with open diagnostic access, an independent shop down the road could have completed the same afternoon for roughly $420. The villain here isn't a person, it's a system, a network of security gateway modules built directly into a truck's electronic control units. These modules sit between the engine, the transmission, the brakes, and any tool trying to read them. If that tool isn't registered and authorized through the manufacturer's own software, the gateway simply refuses the connection. No error message explaining why. No workaround. The truck goes silent. Animated diagram of a truck's electronic architecture, showing a locked gateway module between engine and diagnostic port. This isn't a glitch. It's architecture, built module by module, update by update, over the last 15 years, as trucks quietly transformed from mechanical machines into rolling computers that happen to have wheels. But this is only the surface layer. The story starts in 2012, with an agreement that looked, at the time, like a win for truck owners. Automakers and the aftermarket repair industry signed a memorandum of understanding, promising independent shops access to the same diagnostic information dealerships had. It covered passenger vehicles. 2 years later, in 2014 and 2015, similar agreements extended that promise to trucks over 14,000 pounds. One problem: the agreements covered service manuals and fault codes. They said nothing about what came next. Because trucks were changing. Fast. Manufacturers began wiring in cellular modems, real-time telematics, predictive maintenance alerts streaming straight to manufacturer servers, bypassing the shop entirely. None of that data existed when the 2014 and 2015 agreements were written, so none of it was covered. No obligation, no access, no exceptions. Split screen, a 2005 diesel engine bay next to a modern truck's digital dashboard with dozens of live sensor readouts. Manufacturers then went a step further. They installed the security gateway modules, the same architecture we described a moment ago, physically standing between any outside tool and the truck's own network. If your scanner wasn't licensed by the OEM, it didn't matter how good you were with a multimeter. The gateway locked you out before you even got started. Independent shops, representing the vast majority of post-warranty repair work in this country, suddenly found themselves negotiating for access to trucks they used to fix without a second thought. Some states pushed back. Massachusetts passed a law requiring telematics access for consumers and shops. Voters approved it by a wide margin. And then the lawsuits started. The trade group representing the major manufacturers sued to block it before it ever took effect. A federal judge issued an injunction. As of this year, the law that voters approved still isn't being enforced. The case remains tied up in court, years after it passed. But here's what most people get wrong. Most people assume this is about safety, about protecting drivers from bad repairs. It isn't. It's about margin. Parts, labor, diagnostic subscriptions. Here's the number that explains everything. Independent shops have historically completed about 80% of out-of-warranty repair work in this country. That's not a rounding error. That's the majority of a multi-billion-dollar service economy, and it's happening outside the dealership network, which means outside the manufacturer's direct revenue stream. Now look at what dealership repair actually costs. Industry analysis puts dealership service at roughly 36% more expensive than the same job at an independent shop. For a fleet running multiple trucks a year, that gap compounds into tens of thousands of dollars annually, money that either stays in an operator's pocket or gets redirected straight into a manufacturer's service division. That's more than most owner-operators clear in profit over an entire quarter. Zoom out further, and the number gets almost impossible to grasp at a human scale. Projections show that by 2035, roughly 155 million vehicle owners across the broader auto and truck market will see their average annual repair bill rise by about $200 because of restricted repair access. Multiply that out, and you're looking at more than $30 billion in added repair costs, absorbed by the people who can least afford to absorb it: owner-operators, small fleets, rural haulers who don't have a second shop to call. Slow zoom on a map of the U.S. highlighting rural counties with no independent diesel repair shop within 100 miles. Here's the counterintuitive turn. This isn't a story about manufacturers protecting trade secrets. It's a story about manufacturers discovering that data itself became more profitable than the truck. Resolving forward reference number 2, the villain system isn't malicious in the cartoon sense. It's a company doing exactly what its incentive structure rewards: capturing repair revenue that used to flow to thousands of small, independent competitors. Diagnostic subscription software for a single truck brand can run hundreds of dollars a year, and that's before a single wrench is turned. One diagnostic tool provider in this space advertises that a single dealership visit can cost over $500 and waste a full day, and frames that as the reason to buy their $1,000 plus hardware kit instead. Read between the lines. Even the workaround has become its own industry, built entirely on top of a problem that didn't exist 20 years ago. That leaves one more thread still open, the one about who actually owns the truck once you've paid for it. If you've ever felt like buying a truck doesn't mean you actually own it, you were right. And you were right before anyone in the industry would say it out loud. Close shot of a bill of sale being signed. Pull focus to the truck's VIN plate. Legally, you hold the title. Economically, you're leasing something else entirely: the right to have that truck talk to a diagnostic tool. And that right is licensed, renewed, and priced by a company that has every incentive to keep the terms in its own favor. Resolving forward reference number 1. This is the paradox from the opening. A wrench used to be enough. Now the wrench is secondary to the password, and the password belongs to someone else. Most people watching news coverage of right to repair assume it's a consumer electronics story: printers, phones, tractors. Almost nobody connects it to the truck idling outside a warehouse right now, waiting on a fault code only one shop in the state is authorized to clear. That's the gap this channel exists to close. There is a federal bill, the Repair Act, designed to force manufacturers to give independent shops the same diagnostic access dealerships already have. It has been introduced in Congress multiple times. It has not passed. A related measure, folded into a broader vehicle modernization bill, cleared committee earlier this year, but full passage is still an open question, and enforcement, if it ever arrives, sits years away. Congressional hearing room, empty chairs, gavel resting. Understanding this doesn't just make you a more informed truck owner. It changes how you read every headline about software-defined vehicles, every OEM press release about enhanced security, every dealership ad that quietly never mentions the word lockout. Which brings us to what happens next. Every year Congress delays, the architecture gets harder to unwind, because every new truck rolling off the line is built with the gateway already installed, the subscription already required, the independent shop already locked out by default. For sale independent repair shop sign in a dusty window. The next time your dashboard lights up on an empty stretch of interstate, the question won't be whether a mechanic nearby can fix it. It will be whether the truck lets them try.